Welcome and thank you for listening to the Sales Maven Show. I'm your host, Nikki Rausch. Today's episode is part of the Mastering Excellence series. This is a concept that comes from my background in neurolinguistic programming, where we learn there is a structure to excellence. And once you understand the structure, you can then apply it to your own life and business to achieve similar results. Today's guest is Laurie-Ann Murabito. Let me tell you a little bit about her. She is a speaking and visibility coach. And is a reformed, painfully shy gal who works with motivated business owners to leverage speaking opportunities to get credibility, sell out their high-end programs, and monetize their authority. She combines her years as an award-winning professional speaker, executive leadership coach, and having started 3 successful businesses from the ground up. Besides helping her clients get positioned as the expert in their industry and building a profitable business that aligns with their purpose, she's the best-selling author of Rethink Leadership and Rethink Your Leadership. A few of her clients are Johnson & Johnson, American Cancer Society, Bay State Wealth, and Bali Mastermind by Sabrina Phillip. To learn more, visit her website at speakandstandout.com. Laurie-Ann, welcome to the show, friend. I'm so excited to have you here.
Nikki, so am I. Thank you very much, Nikki, for the invite.
And just to give the audience a little bit of insight, we actually are technically meeting for the first time, but I already feel like, because we had a little conversation beforehand, like we were just meant to know each other.
Yes, I agree. I
I
do
feel like
agree
there's
with
just
that.
already this. I'm so excited to interview you, and I'm so excited for you to share with the audience. The topic that we're going to talk about today is how to have how to have your audience on the edge of their seat when speaking, because this is her jam, people, speaking and helping people really put their message out into the world and make an impact. But before we dig into the NLP questions, would you
Yes.
share a little bit more about how you work with clients and just a little bit about you and your business, the stuff that's not in the bio?
Stuff that's not in the bio. Well,
Yeah.
let's just clarify something that is in the bio.
Okay.
And that is, I really am a reformed, painfully shy girl who couldn't even make eye contact with people. And people find that, like, is that true? And it is true. I just taught myself because I had one of those moments where I realized as I was looking down at the floor that this behavior was not going to serve me in the long run for my life. So I am so glad that that came to me, and I just, I was at that young age where it's like, let me just try looking at people while they're talking to me. And guess what? The earth did not open up and swallow me whole. So I was like, maybe I could, like, I had so much positive reinforcement. I was like, oh, well, maybe I can do it again and a little bit longer. So
Oh,
I share that because I want people to realize that I am living proof that you can do this too, especially if you feel like I'm afraid of speaking in front of people.
I so relate to your story. As a young girl, I was very painfully shy, like so painfully shy that I used to have teachers that would let me stay in on recess because I was so uncomfortable being on the playground with other kids. And I remember one of my teachers in particular, she just let me sit with her every recess because I was too shy to be out there. And so I get it, like getting to that point where you go like, this isn't serving me. What can I do different? So like at what point did you really find speaking as an outlet for you?
Well, self-integrity is one of my highest values. And me and 3 other women were creating and organizing a networking event. And we decided this is how our networking event is going to be different than other networking events. We're going to have education and networking. Laurie-Ann, you do the speaking. And my head shook up and down in the yes. And inside I was like, what are you doing? You don't speak in front of people. But self-integrity made me show up. And I stepped into what I call the college professor. So I
Okay.
went up there. There was no beginning, there was no ending. There was nothing about me as a person or what my business was. I just taught for like 20 minutes to this audience that was a standing room only. And then when I was done, so I'm going to tell everybody, this is not how you end a speech, but this is how I ended this speech. And I said, so I'm done. And if you have any questions for me, I'll be in the back of the room.
I love that so
I
much.
just wanted to get away from all of these eyes on me, but I did it. It was my first one. And people came up to me and said, "So, do you work with clients? Do you have a website?" Because I mentioned none of that. And I was just like, yeah, I just didn't know I could mention that.
Oh,
But
oh,
people, said, like, "So, how can I get in touch with you? How could I work with you? How could I learn more?" And, I did it again and again. And shortly after that, like I was fully booked as a coach, all because of speaking.
wow. What a
And I
beautiful
wasn't that
story.
good. I wasn't that good back then.
Well,
But
it also goes to show that, we're all, I think, a work in progress and that you learn and you get better and you progress. And even wherever you are right now, you can make an impact, whatever your skill level, whatever, like you can make an impact, I think.
yes, yes, 100%.
Awesome.
100%. So I know
Awesome.
that didn't really answer your question about what's not in the bio, but I felt it
I
needed
think
clarifying.
it was a fun story, and I think it helps us get to know you a little bit better, and my heart just, like, I feel for that little girl, that shy little girl, and I feel for the woman who stepped in front of the networking group for the first time and then wanted to run to the back of the room, like, I so get it, and I think probably many of the listeners will be able to relate to that as well, so thank
Yeah,
you for sharing that.
welcome.
Okay, so we're gonna dig into content here and talk about how to have your audience on the edge of their seat when speaking. So, the first question I always like to start with is if I was, this is very NLP stuff. So, if I was to stand in for you for a day and I would like to know, like, what would I have to do or how would I have to think in order to behave in a way that allowed me to put together the type of presentation that would have my audience on the edge of their seat?
Well, you'd probably first have to do some journaling
Okay.
and also body movement. So, fun fact, years ago, I have a degree in exercise physiology, and I also, of course, became an aerobic instructor. So I was a fitness instructor for many years. So music and movement really put me into the right energy so that I could always show up for my class. So I come from healthcare, like I had my full-time job. I would drive home in traffic and like do like a 6 p.m. class. And some days I was just exhausted from the mental work of working with patients. There's just a lot that goes into patient care.
Mhm.
And so it's the music that, talking about like NLP, it was my trigger to get my body and my mind and my energy at a certain level so that I could inspire the audience. So there would be definitely be some movement that you would get into that energy, that creativity, that powerful place for you to start crafting words together.
Love that. So journaling, body movement, and also putting music in there as well to help with that.
Yeah, today it is part of my pre-speaking routine. Like before I got on the podcast, I made sure that I did X, Y, and Z. And it involves music, it involves moving my body. I want to show up for your audience, with a certain level of enthusiasm and energy so that they hopefully feel it 50% of what I'm trying to put out there.
Yeah.
So because I just believe that when you're in this place of feeling powerful and energetic, you're going to tap into, I can use that story. I can use that quote. And here's how I'm going to pause powerfully. You just, it's almost like tapping into your inner artist.
Mhm. Yeah, I feel that. I totally feel that with what you're saying, and I have some rituals, some things that I do before I go on stage, before I get on a podcast, like the same, not the same thing that you're doing necessarily, but having some kind of a ritual that allows me to go like, okay, this is the focus. This is where I'm at. This allows for me to be that best version of myself that I can be in that moment. So I
Yes.
love that so much. Okay, so next question here is when you think about wanting to have your audience on the edge of their seat when speaking, what are the goals that come to mind for you?
When when I am crafting a speech with a one-on-one client or a group of people,
Mhm.
and I always want like two things. And one is, how can we bring out your personality in the speech? That's number one. So
Okay.
just to give you an example of some of the personality traits that people have used, I've had a couple of opera singers. So they have sang somewhere in the middle of their presentation or to just put people in the middle of a story. That's been one. I had another woman, her and her husband renovated homes. So she was the one with the pink tool belt and the pink tools. But yeah, she could work any like handsaw like nobody. So I was just always like that. Those are fun facts because she just didn't look like she was the construction type. She had this beautiful long blonde hair. She was just like very feminine looking. It's just like you just don't put two and two together. So I just said for an audience, like when they hear that, they're just going to be like, wow, that's amazing. So, what's a skill or a talent or a hobby of yours that you could infuse in your presentation? Because that's going to make you unique. Because let's face it, there is an ocean of leadership speakers out there. And I'm just picking on leadership as an
Yeah.
example.
Yeah, I think that's
It's
perfect.
literally a red ocean. So, how does any leadership speaker stand out when they bring their personality, their experience into the speech?
Hmm.
Nobody can duplicate that.
I
So
love that.
that's one. The other way that we have the
Okay.
audience on the edge of their seat is by setting a goal. Where are we going with the speech? So I always tell people there are two goals that you are setting. The goal for you as the speaker. What do you want to get out of the speech? And the other goal is what's the goal for the audience? When you are done speaking, what do you want the audience to think, feel, or believe differently? When you have that answer, now we know what has to be in the speech in order to accomplish that goal.
So brilliant. Okay, so just for the audience, I'm going to take a moment and just kind of this some of the stuff that's coming to mind here. So these two goals that we talked about is bring something out in your personality, that thing that makes you unique. And I loved the examples that you gave about the tool belt and now the other one just completely like dropped out of my
Opera
head.
singer,
The opera
opera
singer. Yes,
singers.
thank you, thank you, thank you.
Those are just
Uh,
two that I wanted to share.
they're so fun though, right? And it paints the picture, right? It gives you the beautiful like visual image of that. And also you can hear the opera singer and I can imagine the pink tool belt and the whole, I love it so much. And then the other thing, the second one is setting a goal, but not just for yourself, but also for the audience. And I love what you said about, deciding what do you want your audience to think, feel, or believe differently at the end of your talk.
Mhm.
So brilliant. So
That's how I
brilliant.
wrote both of my books. In my very first book, I was in National Speakers Association and they're like, write a book, write a book, write a book. And I was just
Yeah.
like, okay, I'll write a book. And I just did this, what I call the Stephen Covey thing. When people close my book after they're done reading, what did I want them to think, feel, and do differently? Okay, here's the goal. So what did that mean had to be in the book? So now I knew what chapters I had, and I literally wrote every single chapter the exact same way. When they're done this chapter, what do I want them to do, think, and feel?
And if you put that, and I'm imagining you're putting that back into your talk too, right? Like in the
Yes.
beginning, your intro, what do you want them to think, believe, and feel in your
Yes.
middle and your end? And I know you say there's more to a talk than a beginning, a middle, and an end. So I'm not trying to simplify it, but
That's okay.
just where my brain is going. So do you want to comment on what I just said or correct me in any way? Please do.
No, I don't want to correct you. I would say like your beginning is I build a speech in blocks.
Okay.
And just for your audience so that they know why I'm saying blocks is because there'll be many times a speaker goes over time. And a meeting planner, a conference organizer is going to come up to you saying, I know we had you booked for 45 minutes, but the person before you went over by 12 minutes. And after you was lunch. Can you cut your talk down to 30 minutes? And when you build your speech in blocks, because your job as a speaker is to make the meeting planner look like a rock star, and you say, of course. And making your speech 15 minutes shorter does not mean you speak faster. Just take a section out of your talk. You just say, you know what? I'm just not going to go over this point. Done. Easy. So, but that all comes from building your speech in blocks. So your beginning is actually composed of two blocks. It's your opening and your authority section. So for just to explain why those two blocks, because you want your audience to lean into you with your very first words. You want them to put their phone down, even if they hear it go bing, like there's a text message coming in. But then what happens with your audience is then they lean back in their seat and they cross their arms saying, yeah, but why should I listen to you? That's your authority section. So those are two blocks that are in the beginning. And the middle part is the learning. This is where you're teaching the audience. And in a typical 50, 55-minute keynote speech breakout session, you would be teaching 3 points. And each of those 3 points needs to have 3 pieces of data that supports it. So consider yourself, you're not just a speaker, now you're a lawyer defending your point. And you have 3 pieces of evidence before you move on to the next one. And then your ending is really your call to action. What do you want the audience to do? What do you want them to raise their hand for? What do you want them to like take that step forward with you? And then you're closing your presentation. So there's, I would say, 2 blocks in the close.
Okay. So back to your example at the beginning where the organizer comes to you and says, "Hey, can you cut your speech down to, you know, 30 minutes?"
Mhm.
Is the place where you take out the block the middle, one of the teaching points? Do you remove it completely, or do you actually have, instead of 3 pieces of evidence for each one, do you just have 2 pieces of evidence for each one? How do you
I would rather you do less but more, go deeper,
Mhm.
than to still try to cover all 3 points and I just go a little shallow. Because if anything, like which one of those points are you maybe going to cover in your call to action? Because then you get to tease the audience. I'm so sorry I'm not able to go over my 4th pillar because you did never do 1, 2, 3. You never do them all in a row. We're teasing the audience. Let's just say you were doing your 1st pillar, your 3rd pillar, and then the 4th pillar. I'm so sorry, audience, that I wasn't able to go over this last one. But if you're curious, like I have a great handout for you, a great PDF. And now you're intriguing people because as human beings, we just got to close the loop.
Yes. Yes. I love that. Okay. So my next question for you, because we kind of started about goals and then I kind of went off a little bit, but how do you know that you're achieving your goals of having your audience on the edge of their seats? You talked about the 2 goals, like, and within those, what does that mean? So how do you know you've achieved them, or how do you know you are achieving them when you're speaking?
Well, I think you get a sense for your audience. You're seeing the heads nod. Nobody's pulling out their phone. I mean, if they're pulling out their phone, maybe they're taking, pictures of your screens, your PowerPoint, but they're nodding in agreement. They're behaving in a way that you were predicting. How do you know that you got them to think, feel, and do something different? They signed up for something that you were offering them. There's that nod, but also keep in mind that just because they don't sign up then doesn't mean they don't sign up later.
Mm.
You just never know the impact. So I spoke for the scrap metal industry. It was their business conference, bunch of CEOs in the audience, and I was giving away copies of my book, and I had a conversation with a CEO. And really a great conversation. And he wasn't able to get any of the copies that I had. I said, give me your business card. I'm going to mail you a copy of my book. And that's as far as that conversation went. 6 months later, I got an email from him that said, I loved your book so much, I bought one for everybody in the company. Maybe an Amazon bestseller that day. 6 months later, I get an email from him that says, I do a leadership conference for all of my top leaders. This was a recycling company. what's going to take to have you come out to Oregon? So speaking is the gift that keeps on giving, because a year after I did that for him, he called me and said, Laurie-Ann, I'm on the committee for the state of Oregon's recycling conference. What's it going to take to bring you out again?
Fantastic.
So just because somebody doesn't sign up right then and there, it doesn't mean that they don't remember you.
That is such a good point. So, so true. I've experienced some similar type
Yeah.
responses over speaking too. So I love that. I wasn't planning to ask you this, but I'm wondering if it's okay if I do. And if not, we can cut it out. But how does that relate now to a lot of times when you're speaking, at least maybe for me, maybe this is only to
Mhm.
me, but um, is it's virtual. So you don't get the same, I know one of the things it drives me nuts as a speaker, and I encourage my people to think about this, but a lot of people have their camera off. Like you're not getting the head nods like you do in a
Mhm.
live audience. Do you have any comments or thoughts around
Okay.
that?
I just had this question from a client of mine, and I suggested to her, if those blank screens, because you're in gallery mode, is
Mhm.
bothering you, pin your own picture
Mm.
up there. So just pin your own. So like you're just talking to yourself, and you know that like you're seeing all of your reactions, which is just going to be a positive feedback to yourself. So that's one thing. But also when you're speaking virtually, get people to talk in the chat. Ask them quizzes, ask them questions, have them put stuff over there. I spoke at an event that was virtual, and the organizers just weren't ever used to the audience actually sharing stories like, all right, take yourself off of mute and like ask me your question. They had never done that before. This was a healthcare conference,
Uh-huh.
by the way.
Yeah.
And it worked out really well. I mean, because one person said yes to asking a question, a few other people started like, I'll take myself off mute to ask this woman a question. So that's another way. Getting people to engage in that audience is also going to help you. Does that answer your question?
Yes. So brilliant. Thank you for all that. That was some really great
I
nuggets.
also had a client who she literally feeds off the audience. So she
Mhm.
was like, when the world had shut down, she was like, no way that I'm going to be a virtual speaker. I have to be on a stage. She fell in love with virtual speaking. The very first time she did, she was like, I can feel the audience. I can feel their emotions. I can see it. And it just, again, because she could see it and feel it, she just gave even more back to the audience.
I love that. Thank you so much. That was so great. And I also really loved your tip about like pin yourself so you can see your own reactions just to get that kind of feedback. I think that is really brilliant. I will say I actually do that when I'm speaking virtually. Like if I'm having a session with somebody, I turn my camera off because I find myself distracting. But from a speaking standpoint, if I'm teaching or going into a group and speaking and many of the people have their camera off, then it is me paying attention to my own energy level and, what am I doing with my hands and my facial expressions and to make sure there still is that connection. So I love that so much.
I spoke for a large insurance company last year, and their policy was people were not to be on camera.
Mm,
I didn't ask why that was or to
mhm,
go even deeper with it. It's their policy. So I was literally just speaking to the committee.
mhm.
We're the only people who might have had their videos on. Otherwise, it was literally a 200-person audience with nobody on video. So pin your own pin your own picture.
I love that so much. Okay. My next question for you is when you feel like the audience isn't giving you that kind of feedback, right? Maybe they're not engaging or they're not giving you the head nods when you're live. Is there anything that you would recommend or that you do to course correct, to like suck them back in, to bring them back in, to get them on the edge of their seats?
Tell them something funny.
Mm.
If they don't laugh, have a great line such as, wow, I thought that was funny. Or I can sit here and wait until you until you start laughing. And I've used those lines before. And usually it's that second line that makes people laugh
Hmm.
because they weren't expecting me to say something like that.
Yeah. I love that. I love having something in your back pocket that you can pull out.
Always have something in your back pocket.
Yeah. I love that so much. All right. This has been really helpful. The last question that I'm going to ask before we move to kind of just the little something extra questions, is there anything I haven't asked you when you think about having your audience on the edge of their seat that you think is important that we touch on?
Oh, Nikki, I've got like 25 years of public
I know.
speaking experience.
That was a
I
really
can't
big, broad
possibly share
question.
everything
I
in
know.
just, what, 30
I
minutes?
know. I know. Anything though that you're like, I just want to make sure I say this. I want to make sure I give you the opportunity
Well,
to do that.
what I just did is a great line for everybody to use. I
Mm,
actually I did that very intentional. It is a great way because if you're speaking for 30 minutes, a half, 30 minutes, 45, a full hour, maybe even a 90-minute breakout session, it's still not enough time for you to share everything that you know. And even if you did share everything that you know, we don't want to overwhelm the audience.
right.
So to be able to say to them, like, so that they do take you up on your call to action, I literally do say they're like, I have 25 years of speaking experience. There is no way that I can share everything in a 30-minute talk. But what I want to share with you is here's how to get like my 7 best tips. Or in this case, this was one of my magical phrases. It makes people curious. It's a great transition into your offer.
Hmm. I mean, I teach a whole most of what I teach on is creating curiosity, it feels like. So I love that you just did that. I love to plant seeds. I think the way you did it was so beautiful and so authentic and genuine in the conversation. And yet it's planned. Like that's the piece that I just want to comment on to the audience that
It's,
having these types of statements, they feel organic in the conversation and they're natural in the conversation, but there is an intention behind them. Like we're
yes.
driving somewhere. So I love that so
But
much.
it sounds like me. I'm
Because
not
it is
trying
you,
to
right? You're not
use
saying
some,
something that's
yeah,
not true.
yeah, I'm not using some can line. It's just a natural flow in the speech. But there is one thing that I want to share with everybody also,
Okay.
now that I'm
Okay.
thinking about it.
All right.
It's
Perfect.
because one of the most common questions I get or fears is, what if I forget what I'm going to say?
Mm.
Guess what? You are the only person who's going to know that you forgot what you were saying. Okay. So I have literally, like, it's just my personality to play along with it. Again, reform painfully shy girl. I'm just relying on my personality. I have literally, because maybe somebody had asked me a question in the middle of a speech and I'll answer and then I forget where I was. I've literally put my hand on my hip. I look down to the nearest person and say, what was I talking about? The audience thinks it's part of my speech. They think it's part of the act. And
Hmm.
they laugh, and they also think, "Oh, she's like me. She forgot what she was gonna say too." So it'll work well. And then I just pick it right back up because either it does come to mind or somebody will remind you, you were just about to tell us the story about, thank you.
Yeah. I love that. I think that is a brilliant tip. That's one you want to have in your back pocket and ready to go. Giving yourself time to catch up, giving your brain a moment to go, here's your answer. This is where you were, or even for someone in the audience to call it back to you and say, you were just about to tell us the story, right? That is so perfect. And again, it's one of those authentic, genuine pieces at the front of the room. And we didn't go into this, but and this is just my own opinion and totally happy for you to share if you feel differently. But I always want the audience to go like Nikki's like me. Like we're just kind
Mhm.
of like we're just people. Yeah, she's up there on the stage, but I could be up there on the stage too. And I'm interested in what she has to say, but it doesn't take away or diminish them in any way that it's like we're equals and we all need a little help, right? And I think that
Yes.
that's okay to send that message. Obviously you want to be prepared. You want to make sure that what you're sharing resonates with your
Yes.
audience. And I'm not trying to take away from that, but to really send the message like we're alike, I think is important.
Yeah. If you have a hiccup, nobody's really gonna know unless you point it out.
Right.
No big deal.
Right. And even if you point it out, if you can do it in a fun, like and keep going way versus like let it crush you and now it gets awkward and weird, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Just play along with it.
Yeah, play along with it. I love this. Thank you so much. You are brilliant. I know that there's
You.
so much more that we could garner from you. And so I always like to end as we bring it to a close and ask a few little like a little something extra, find out a
Go
little
for
bit more
it.
about Laurie-Ann. Um, my first question is, what's something that brings you pleasure or joy right now?
Nature.
Mm,
Nature. I really do. But I love the ocean. I don't live near the ocean, but I do love the ocean. And I would also say when I hear from my clients, because like they have Voxer access to me, I'm
uh-huh.
like, I did this. I finally did that. Even if it's, I just made room on my calendar to do some research on organizations. I sent out 2 pitches, whether it's, like on a podcast or to a local association, like just hearing them take those little baby steps, just like, I'm like that mama bear. It just makes my heart sing and it makes me so proud and so excited that I'm part of their journey.
I totally get that. I'd love to coach on Voxer, and a lot of my clients have Voxer access to me as well.
Yes.
And those little moments are so delightful. So I love that that was your
Yes.
answer. All right. What's something that people would be surprised to learn about you?
When I was younger, I won first place in a smiling contest.
Oh my gosh. I love that. I
I
feel
think it
like
was,
I could win the contest like that, but tell us more. How
I
did you win a
probably just like
contest on smiling?
I was in Girl Scouts.
Okay.
It was my brownie troop, I think. And there was this local TV channel that would like little groups of people in classrooms, and they always had a smiling contest. And I think I just had like the biggest smile. And so I won first place, and the prize was candy.
You're speaking my language. I could so be down with this. I love candy and I love to smile.
It was so fun. Now I have mentioned that story in front of audiences, and in all the times that I've told that story, I actually had one other person say, I was on that show too.
Really? Oh my
Yes.
gosh.
She didn't win the smiling contest, but she knew exactly what show I was talking about. So that was kind of fun.
Oh, that's so great. One of the biggest game changers in my ability to well, speak, frankly, was during a storytelling class that I was taking storytelling in the Redwood Forest many years ago, and who became my NLP teacher, but this was my first exposure to her. She pulled me aside and said, Nikki, do you realize that when you speak, you smile the whole time? And I was like, yes, because I thought that was the way I was supposed to be, because that's how I was raised, like as a girl, like smile, you know? And
Yes.
when I learned how to not smile and speak, it made a dramatic change in my level of credibility in the front of the room.
Yes, because it depends on what story you're telling. Is it
Yes.
appropriate to even be smiling?
Yes. I
Yeah.
thought you had to just smile the whole time. I didn't learn that until I was in my late 20s. So
Hmm.
I wish somebody had
I
told me
hear you.
sooner.
I hear you. Me too. I was one of those people that was smiling all the time because, that's what good girls do.
That's right. Exactly. Okay. What's something exciting going on in your business right now?
I'm coming out with a limited series podcast.
Ooh,
It's not out yet, but who knows? Maybe when this recording is live, it might be live.
okay.
I'll have to keep you posted. So that is something that I'm really excited about doing. It's almost kind of like an audio course,
Yeah.
like an audio book that's really walking people step by step by step.
So how will people eventually be able to get access if it's not available quite yet when it
There,
comes out?
so you don't, it will be like on all the podcast.
Okay.
It's not a private podcast. I'm
Okay.
calling it a limited series. So it's going to be out there on Apple and Spotify and all the wonderful places. And the name of it is going to be, it's like, I know that it's Speaking Monetization Tips.
Oh,
Yeah. See, oh, I
gotta
like
check
that
that out.
caption.
Yeah, that's a great name. It says right in the title. Why would I listen to this? Heck yeah. I
There you
love
go.
that. Okay. And what is the best way for people listening to connect with you? Because I suspect that there's some listeners out there that are like, I need some more Laurie-Ann in my life. I mean, I feel this way already. So how do we stay in touch with you?
I would say just go to my website and find whatever feels good to you, whether that's Instagram, my podcast, of one of my freebies, the magic phrases I was talking about, or the directory of places to speak. Everything's on my website, and you can just go to whatever social media that you feel most comfortable, where you hang out on the most, and that's where you can find me.
So that is speakandstandout.com. And there are some fantastic resources on there. So I do encourage people to go check that out. Laurie-Ann, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all you shared. You are a wealth of knowledge. I gained so much from this conversation. I feel like I have some new tips and strategies and things that I can put in my toolkit and pull out when I'm speaking. So thank you.
Wonderful, and I can hardly wait for you to be on my show.
I look forward to it. I look forward to it. And for you, the listener, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for participating, for engaging. If there was something that really stood out for you or a story that you want to share, you're welcome to reach out to me. Connect with Laurie-Ann. She's just brilliant. And I'm sure would be happy to hear what was your biggest takeaway from today's session. And I am wishing you continued success in all that you're doing. Thank you for listening. Have a great rest of your day.